Hey all, welcome to the fourth part in where we'll paint the background. Before we start painting the background, I'd like to address that Crayon Dragon is set in like a fantasy medieval world, in a castle basically. Here are my original boards I did back in 2011 for the original film. As you can see, most of the scenes take place within the external parts of the castle, not within the castle, so you'll get shots in courtyard, in a balcony, just outside a building. But yeah, the shot we're working on actually takes place in the courtyard, so perfect. Before I actually make the backgrounds, I actually go and do some research on what I'm gonna paint or draw. Sure, I know I've always wanted a castle, but I have to find out what type of castle I'm eyeing for. That's important. When I first thought of doing a castle, I was thinking of a nice, fancy, elegant castle, but in the end, I decided to go for the latter, a more ruined looking, old and barren castle. I was thinking about more of the story that supported the dragon character. The castle is his habitat, but because it's so old and ruined, it could indicate that he's been waiting there for ages. So that's some funny subtle shit you can come up with when doing these little story elements. Here are some color scripts I did for the film for 2012. Honestly, they're really just thumbnails for the backgrounds. But here's me figuring out the basic aspects for the background, the colors, the tone, and just how the overall staging feels. I made the castle a bit more mystical, having some waterfall elements and having some places where there are ponds. But we're not really going to use any of these colors. So, let's talk about our values. I don't really usually do this step, but I just want to show you guys that it's something to think about when coming up with these backgrounds. When I desaturated the original picture from the original short, it seemed a bit flat and muddy. So I was experimenting, should I have darks on lights or lights on darks? Both of them actually make the girl pop out more than the original short. Technically, I thought darks on lights was the best because it made the girl overall stand out. But I like the idea of lights on darks, where the girl is more bright and the background is more dark. I think it's because that what she's looking at is light and it's sort of brightening her day and she's getting brighter. It's kind of stupid. I'm kind of making excuses now, but for some reason lights on darks just does it better for me. So I'm gonna go with that. Kind of like a new world or a new day is dawning. Now in the last video, I did a small test trying to show you guys what the lighting test looked like. If you remember, I just used a solid blue background. But the blue itself fit so well and complemented the girl, who was mostly in red and warmer colors. It just looked visually pleasing, so I decided to give myself a few stabs of different blues I can do. So here's some shit I whipped out. I'm not really happy with how these turned out, but it's there just to give me an idea on what I'm looking for. So as you can realize, they're mostly in blues. Some are bright blues, some are dark blues, some are too saturated, and some are a bit more subtle. Anything vibrant, bright, or saturated might stand out too much and distract from the girl, so A and B are out of the question. I'm not a fan that C feels a bit more purple, so I'm gonna go with D. I kind of like that subtle teal in D, and it complements well with the girl. So there you have it, I'm gonna go with something that's close to D. Let's get started painting. Now we're gonna do the thing that I loathe the most, painting the background. Let's get to it. When you open up Photoshop, you're gonna want to go to New to make a new document, and then we're gonna adjust its frame size. I realize it's already in the dimensions we wanted. So just to let you guys know, I'm using a fake CinemaScope aspect ratio instead of the normal HD, so I'm going for something that's a 1920 by 800 pixels with a max DPI of 300. Now, if this workspace is too small for you and you want more detail, you can go to Image and then Image Size and then change your size from there. If you do increase it, make sure its proportions are locked. By clicking this little chain, you can lock the proportions of the width and the height, so if you change one, for example, the other will be affected. Now, I'm ready to start painting. With this standard brush, I create a new layer so I can paint on top of my white layer instead of painting on the same layer. You can actually hide your user interface if you press Tab on your keyboard. Pressing it again will turn it back on. Pressing the F key will change the color of the interface background, as well as toggle a full screen window of your canvas. I kind of have an idea on what I want the background to have, like a pillar, a little column, some walls and rocks here. So with that being said, I'm just gonna gesture it really fast. I'm telling myself this is a wall, This wall's coming closer to me, this wall's facing me, but it's further away. I'm just setting placeholders for future draw-overs. Once I have a composition I'm happy with, I'm going to lower the opacity of this layer and create a new layer in which I'll draw over. Maybe adjusting some composition changes or making changes in things I want the background to have. Maybe I realize the rocks on the column or on the pillar are too high and maybe I need to tone it down a bit. Maybe there's another pillar on the far left. I'm adding visual notes to myself, saying that the rocks are just made of huge chunks of boulders, giant chunks of rocks, cobblestone, the castle could just be made of bricks. These are things I'm slowly thinking about. So I'll just keep doing this until I have enough information I need to start putting in some more detailed lines. I guess it's best I just fast forward to that point. Now we move on to a step that I find problematic, which is painting. First of all, I need to make an apology because the quality of the videos you'll see here are much weaker. This is because I was still trying to find the right software for video capturing, so I recorded most of these in a weaker software. So here I've basically finished my rough placeholder. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to create a new layer underneath this and turn the opacity of my placeholder down. I usually go for something that's like a 20%, 5%, anything that's faintly visible. Then I'll create a new layer, and this layer will be a tie-down layer. This is where I start defining the materials in the background, using my placeholder as my guide. So, does this method sound familiar to you guys? You bet your ass it does. So, like how I was doing my animation work, I'm doing my background work in a very similar way. I'm starting to draw more detailed and more intricate to indicate some of the rocks, the formation of the details, things that will guide me when I do start painting and coloring. Some people can actually paint backgrounds without having to do too much intricate line work and just go straight into blocking out some of the rough shapes, a very speed painting method. So if you feel comfortable doing more of that than what I'm doing, by all means, go do that. I'm only drawing lines for myself because it gives me the confidence I need to actually start painting and coloring with. And also, I just want to define things like what's a rock, what parts are moss, and what parts are orange and some parts blue, what other type of materials am I using. As you can see, I'm still being very loose because you're not really going to see these lines in the final product, but for me, they still play a vital role in this background, so I'm going to keep them still. But I'm giving myself as much information that I need in order to paint intricately, so I'm still giving time and attention to a lot of the materials in the shot. Anyways, I'm just gonna wrap up these tie-down lines pretty soon, because I think we have enough information we need to actually start painting some of the intricate details. Before I start painting, I'm gonna create a new layer underneath my line art. This is so that I can fill the entire canvas with the most dominant color of the shot. Earlier, I decided I wanted to go for a dark teal as my dominant color. So with the paint bucket tool, I'm going to fill the whole background or the layer underneath the line art with teal. After doing that, I'm going to create a new layer where I'll actually start painting some of the shapes. Considering that the color I chose is dark in the value scale, I'm going to work from dark to light. So most of the stuff I'm going to be painting right now will be based on the lighter value. So I'm going to choose something that's a bit more warm, something that contrasts the dark teal. So maybe a slight orange will do. Now I'm going to start applying these colors on the shot. Using a special textured brush that I downloaded, I'm going to start adding gentle strokes to indicate the light. First of all, I have to apologize. I can't remember the name of this brush. I remember downloading it from a Tumblr post, but sadly I can't remember the name of the brush set I got it from. However, when it comes to finding speed painting brushes online, I can recommend Goro's brush set. Goro was a concept artist I followed back in CG Society or CG Talk forums. He'd always do all these speed painting stuff for speed painting challenges, and they were some of the most badass speed paintings. He'd usually do them in like 30 minutes, 20 minutes. They were so awe-inspiring. And his speed painting video was actually one of the first ones I've seen. And his brush set for speed painting was actually one of the first customized brushes I downloaded for Photoshop. And to this day, I still use a lot of them. I've always mixed up my brush set over the years, but I can always count on Goro's for everything I do when it comes to speed painting. So go check it out. Go find Goro's brush set tools for speed painting. It's really basic because it's almost 10 years old, I believe. But I think that's what I like about it. It's basic. So as you can see, I'm using this chalky, textured, squarey looking brush, which is great for me because the castle walls are very rocky, and this brush is perfect for it. As you notice, I'm starting to smoothen out some of the brush strokes I made just to make it less distracting and so that I can focus more on the bits that I want to have more accents and contrast. So I'm thinking maybe some sunlight should be hitting the pillar. Usually when there's light on something, not only does it get brighter, but a lot more definition will be showing, such as contrast and its shadows, which is a great strategy for creating accents in your work. At the same time, I don't want too much light because that might be distracting from the girl. So I'm playing with the idea of having subtle light bounce around the room. And I'm thinking because the floor is bright, some of the light from the floor is bouncing off the wall. So you have this subtle global illumination thing going on. So it just feels a lot more natural in terms of where I'm setting up my lights and colors. As you'll notice, I'm going to start making my brush smaller and start adding in a bit more detail in some of the rocks, some more shading, some more cast shadows, things I feel like that still need to be blocked out in order to create some of the accents I want. I have this rule when it comes to colors that I don't simply make things brighter by adding white or darker by adding black. Technically, when things go darker, they don't get darker by being more blacker, but sometimes they'll reflect some of the shade colors, which in this case is teal. Or for example, in here, when the moss is hit by light, not only does it get brighter by getting whiter, but there's more saturation, it gets more vibrant, colors can get warmer. But it's all up to you really. This is really just a direction choice I'm going for. Now I'm thinking, should I add a bit more light to the background? If I add too much, it might flatten out the girl who's already in bright colors. So using that chalky brush, I'm just gonna cautiously add some higher values. Now, once I feel that my rough colors for the lighting and some of the shapes are down, I'm going to turn down the opacity of my line art, pick a standard brush without any opacity settings or textures, and add some flat colors so I have more of an opaque style. This is something I do because when I paint with textured brushes, I tend to get lost and I end up modifying my picture. Using a brush without any opacity settings helps me become more decisive in my strokes. Therefore, it's easier to read. My line art layer still exists, but I turned it down so that I can focus on the colors and the shapes of my brush strokes. Using this method, I could add in some more intricate details with it being clear and not modified by texture. If I do decide to add texture or smoothen and blend it out, I can always do that later, but I do want the information to read clearly. So that's why I chose more bold brushes. Now while I paint this, there are things I want to get off my chest because it's on the same topic. See, before going into animation, I wanted to go into concept art. So I participated in a lot of speed painting and a lot of concept artwork. So I would join film projects and modding communities, and they were always looking for concept artists. I would befriend a lot of concept artists. But the more I did concept artwork, the more it started to die down for me because I felt like I was doing the same thing everyone else was doing. Everyone was painting the same sci-fi stuff you'd see in Halo. Everyone I was familiar with was trying to paint like Craig Mullins. And for those of you who don't know, Craig Mullins is a very well-known concept artist, and he's talented. He's a big name, everyone wants to be like him. So they start painting like him. And to me, it just felt a bit incestuous, so I went back to animation. Honestly, I think I just hung out with the wrong crowd because I know a lot of great concept artists who are cool and chill and talented. But again, I realized that I didn't have the patience for doing concept art and doing the stuff that they were doing. But I have to say, it helped me a lot on color theory, on understanding shapes and composition. All my backgrounds that I've done for my short films at CalArts, they were all speed painted. I think they took about a week for each film. So all the stuff I did during my interest in concept art and speed painting totally helped. Anyways, back to the painting. As you have noticed, I'm adding new layers and playing with blend modes such as overlay, soft light, color dodge, screen, add. What I do is create a series of brush strokes on where I want some light to radiate. I'll then change that layer's blend mode to a setting where it makes the other layers underneath brighter. I only do these at locations where I want the attention to be. Once I'm happy with the blend modes or how it's looking, I would then blur those brush strokes so it gives off this radiating glow. Anyways, this is how I work on my backgrounds. It really changes depending on the shot or depending what I'm trying to achieve. So if you feel that my painting methods suck and you decide to do something else, by all means go for it. This video was really only meant to serve a purpose in showing the process of how I'm achieving this certain shot. Anyways, I think I'm just about done with this image. Let's wrap up. Now with the painting shit done, let's see that sucker. There it is, our background. It's not the most prettiest background, but it's a background. It works. You can save this as a Photoshop document, a PSD, because After Effects can read PSDs. Speaking of After Effects, our next episode will be the final for this making of the shot, which is compositing, putting it all together. Finally, so stay tuned for the final episode of the shot tutorial. Thank you guys for watching another episode on the String Bang Workshop. There will be more to come, as always. Let's end this shit.